camera, because it's really important that
you look fabulous.
Okay, so it's time for our 10-minute talk
Okay.
for the week. Are we doing these weekly now?
Yeah, we're trying.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. No guarantees, though.
Not that we shouldn't be producing other content as well.
Shrug.
So we're gonna do a 10-minute talk today, and this week, because I'm sometimes remiss in coming up with topics, I've come up with a topic for the week.
What's the topic? I don't know this topic, so this is gonna be fun.
The topic this week is understanding the context in which we tell stories.
Oh, I have so many follow-up questions.
Yes.
Are you
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. You go first. I want to hear why you thought this topic.
Well, so I told a story at church for the first time, in the UCC church I'm interning at. They used to do a time, kind of like a time for all ages. They just call it children's story time, and it happens every time. They do multi-generational pre-COVID about once a month, and now that I am there and am an ex-DRE and RE teacher, and there's
Pastor.
not a youth pastor, I guess, but intern minister, because to differentiate from a youth pastor who is fully called and ordained and all of that. I haven't told a story in a while, so I was a little bit nervous about it. It went fine. And the story I told today was Stone Soup, and it's it gets told in apparently UCC churches, but certainly in every UU church I've been a member of. I've had to hear Stone Soup once a year or so. And as we are wont to do on this channel, as I was refreshing my memory of the story last night, I started to look at the history of it and the different iterations of the story that have been told since its invention in the first time it was written down in 1720 by a French author. I can't remember her name, but she was a famous author at the time, and she recorded the story as part of a novel she had written. It was nested in the novel. And variations of the story have different endings or different contexts that they're told in, and I know that you're a storyteller, and I traditionally do kind of a mix. I don't do every story extemporaneously or from memory or tell it differently every time. I tend to write them, or someone says, well, you have 2 minutes, make it short, and so I've got to take a long story and pare it way down. And in this case, I was given no parameters, so I did it extemporaneously, and I know the story, and so I just told it. And I don't want to keep talking and take up all the space in the room. But the idea is, so feel free to respond at any point. When I think about the different endings of the story, depending on which one I chose, the congregation could have taken away a different message.
Yes. So when I tell a story, and I have a few that I tell kind of in different ways because they have different primary themes, and that's kind of how I look at it. If I'm going to go intellectually on it, I look at what does the congregation or the people that I'm speaking to, no matter who they are, my target audience, what do they need to hear to get them to the week, to get them to the day, or the purpose of the story? Often in a Sunday service, or even on this channel, it's about, very driven. It's a very driven point. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just about, and this is my favorite kind of storytelling. You tell a story that can be taken in many, many different ways, and then you don't tell your audience the way you want them to take it. It's the most amusing for me because I'll tell those stories, and they're very open-ended, lots of themes, lots of things, and then I leave it up to the person's individual experience to determine what they were meant to take away from it. And those are my favorite coffee hour discussions, is you drop a story like that, and then people will come up to you and they will tell you what they think. They don't mean to do this, but they tell you what they took away from it, what they think the story was about. And it's amazing to me in a beautiful way, all the different responses you get. And I think that's for me the most successful storytelling. I know that's not very traditional UU lecture mode, and I'm not good at those. If you invite me to come and give a lecture at the Sunday service, I'm the wrong person. You want me to come and make your congregants feel something? I'm probably the right person.
Okay, that's a very good sales pitch. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's not what I meant.
Everyone who needs a guest speaker, Erin is available, but only at very odd hours because of where she's geolocated in the world. So
that's not what I meant. Smarty pants. I meant
I'm teasing.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like a different, like if I don't have the people who are listening to me interacting with me, which is why I think I struggle with just the YouTube where I'm like, okay, camera, and I have to dance. Like people always comment on my dancing because I have to motivate myself to like be self-involved, which is hard to do 3 minutes in U history because I want to interact with my audience. Because I'll even change a story because I do extemporaneously speak based upon their facial expressions. I might modify it slightly, or if they look upset by something, I might emphasize a more hopeful point. Oh. Is our
We have a guest on the show. What?
I made a candle.
Oh, you made a candle.
Yeah.
He's playing a game.
Okay. Awesome.
But that's okay.
Awesome. Yeah, the interactive audience thing.
My audience today was interactive, and I wasn't entirely expecting that, but they actually did some shout outs to it that were not scripted. But that's not so today the topic of the month of October, minus last week that was a blessing the animals at another church, so there was no sermon per se about this month's theme is stewardship. We're starting our stewardship drive, and apparently Stone Soup is a story you tell during stewardship month. And so I had a specific, like I couldn't tell a story that had an ambiguous ending that people could, because there's a specific goal.
Know something very weird about
James.
James, we're actually recording something right now. I'm not, you can tell us as soon as we're done, you come and tell it, Jax. We'll keep recording.
He's bringing something for our Stone Soup today. James
He brought something to Stone Soup today.
Yeah.
Actually, in now and earlier today in church. What was I saying? Yes, it was like interactive, but unexpectedly so. Where was I? Oh, and there was a desired outcome.
Yes.
So depending on how you tell the story, because it's a story of people who are wandering, who have no food, and people who live in a village and have some amount of food. Depending on how the story is told, it can be very prejudicial against any of the characters in the story. In some versions of the story, like the one I did today, it is, I did a wandering traveler who's on a long journey, and all they have with them is a giant pot and a spoon.
The spoon, yeah.
Yeah, and actually the way I did it, the character didn't even have a stone. I took it off of the altar table. I hope it made it back because I handed it to someone and said, will you please return this? I have to leave now. But that's neither here nor there. The point is we have a cairn on the table of 3 smooth stones, and one of them was perfect. And the character, as he's, thinking to himself, how am I going to do this? How am I going to convince people? Sees the stone and picks it up, the magical stone, and says, here's the stone. And so in this case, it's a single wandering traveler who's just on a long journey and doesn't have food. And the villagers, simply it's a stranger and don't necessarily feel outwardly like they need to give to the wandering stranger. And they are essentially kind of fooled into it by the idea of the stone soup, but they are not fooled into it the same way that some of the stories make the villagers out to be incapable of deciphering the sensible knavery of the person going through the town, to throw a little bit of philosophy in there. And in other stories, the wanderers are soldiers, and they explicitly have a plan to fool the dumb villagers.
Yeah.
Right? Who are not going to give them any food. So they come up with a way to do it. And they are doing their best to take
Why
advantage
did
of the
you say
village.
dumb villagers?
Well, because that's how the story is told sometimes, James.
It's not a good thing, James.
It is not a good thing. It's why I didn't tell the story that way, James. Okay, but we're still recording, so you're going to be on YouTube. Just telling you. I know you.
I
yes,
love the fact that he points that out, though.
He has made guest appearances before. So anyways, there's all these different ways of telling the story. And as they've been written down over time from 1720, then the next time it was recorded was in 1808 in England, and then in 1812 or something in America for the first time it was written down. Each iteration, there's usually, the message is a little bit convoluted in terms of some people in the story, everyone in the story has some kind of issue, right? They're either not able to figure out they're being fooled, or they're taking advantage of the other person, or in modern context, there's certainly a parallel with, people who are unhoused and maybe who we see asking for food or money in a local setting.
Yes. Well, it's a universal theme. The reason that stone soup is often used is because it's an easily modified story. And two, I think that you can really make the point, like, the foot stomp, so to speak, like that thing that you're like, this is the thing for the reason I'm telling this particular story right now. But next week you could tell the story in a completely different way and mean something different.
Well, in the context of the stewardship campaign, some of the ways the story is told, the villagers are very miserly. They do not want to give out any of their food. They hoard it. They don't share it with each other.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do was to create the fact that they just didn't realize that by coming together in community, they could create a very delicious soup. But all you had to do was give a little bit of your own stuff and create the soup, right? Yeah. Which is how churches are created. We each give a little bit and create something greater than let's just make the assumption that it's churches, okay? Not call out. But that was the issue, is which version do I want to tell, and what risk do I run if I just print one off the internet and just go like, I'm not going to bother reading it, and I'm not going to bother contextualizing it for myself and just read the wrong version, and they could be like, why am I giving to a stewardship campaign where somebody's getting up and telling us we don't give enough? So I was a little bit like, how do you get? Yeah, I get that this is for stewardship, but there's the opportunity for it to go badly wrong.
Anytime you tell, especially a kind of well-known, or not well-known, but a story that's been told in many different ways, and then you tell it a different way, or you tell it a new way, there is that, or you get the very well-meaning intended person who comes up to you afterward to tell you how you told it wrong. So you have to.
Well, I left. James had a birthday party to go to, so they didn't have a chance.
he escaped.
I'm out. I mic dropped it and I left. No, it's so agreed. Although I'll be honest, I don't know. Most of the time when I've been telling stories in a church setting, reading them from a book or telling them extemporaneously or scripted or whatever, there's very little critique of them usually, because they're ostensibly for children and nobody wants to so that's just what I've observed. And I'm not saying it's not true, but usually it's like, oh, that was a great story. Not, that story, I've heard a better version or something like that. It's usually much more tame.
Well, I'm an involved storyteller, so but I love stories, and I thank you for bringing this topic up, because I think it's neat to consider who you're telling the story to, why you're telling it to them, what you want them to take away, if anything. Sometimes, like I said, my favorite experiences are the ones where I don't tell them what they're taking away.
Well, yes, and I like doing that too, but in this case I had a very clear message. Yes. But the other point I was thinking about was, like, you have the villagers who represent the church, right?
Yes.
So you also have, let's say that someone comes into the church who is unhoused, and you tell the story, and you use wording that is very disrespectful to the unhoused folks. And they're sitting there, and you have unintentionally, by telling this children's story from long ago, right? Like the first time it was recorded was 1720 in France. And so it was probably a well-told story before that, and the author who recorded it just heard it somewhere.
Yeah,
So
it's
we're talking about a story from 1600s Europe, most likely,
Mhm.
or earlier. And you don't think about it in context of today, and suddenly the wanderer who has no food is very easily can be metamorphized into someone who's unhoused, and
could
the
be
church.
a lot of people.
Well,
Anyone
and food is always
uncommunicated.
yeah,
Anyone
food
who's
is an
not-
issue no matter what.
Yes, true. Food is a human condition.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's just yeah, that was my thought for today. And we've been telling some stories lately. I think I've told stories. I think the storyteller on the channel has not told a story. Did you tell a story yet?
I've done a story. I did a story, didn't I? I have so many sitting waiting for me to tell them. And I've been, it's not that I've been lazy, it's that I've been actually super harassed with lots of things and lots of different, like I've too many, what is it, the spoons? I don't have enough spoons lately.
You can use that if you want. But I would say busy is also accurate. We talked about it last week, about why we hadn't been producing as much content. But now, 2 weeks in a row, we've got
I know
15-minute talk, 10-minute talks, we're calling them, of any length.
Mhm.
We'll talk till we're done talking. And
I would
James,
love-
it just interrupts and
Well, it's
gets
okay.
longer.
We love him. But I would love to hear if anyone is actually interested, what stories should Eric and I tell? What the soup smells weird. What fables our stone soup, when we make stone soup, smells weird. But what fables, folk tales, or wisdom tales would you like us to share?
And from what traditions?
Yeah, because that would be fun. You tell us. What would you challenge Eric or I to tell? I would love to do challenge.
Yes, put it in the comments below. And I learned today from somebody
Mhm.
that comments actually help us. They're part of the algorithm.
Oh, I didn't know that. Please
I
comment.
don't. I would say that likes, and this is, we're letting in the viewers on a little secret here. Likes are not supposedly as much as part of the algorithm. They tell us something. So if you hate something we do, put a dislike. That doesn't hurt our feelings. Put a like if you like it. The comments, I think, are a higher level of engagement. It's like hitting the subscribe button. It helps out because it really shows like a commitment to engagement from the viewers, which helps us out. And then more people watch the channel because YouTube sees that we're doing the work.
Well, on that note, thank you all for dropping by as we talk about storytelling. And again, let us know what stories you want us to hear.
Absolutely. We'll tell them. But probably not a lot of 1-minute shorts. That didn't work very well.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.